as long as Erik Ten Hag gets the targets that he wants, then that's the important thing.
Hello and welcome back to the Premier League Predictor series. I am joined by my other co-host today, which is Andy from the Anglo-Italian Podcast. But this time he's going to be discussing his beloved Man United. If you haven't already done so, you may have not seen our last episode where I did it with Rory talking about Arsenal. I'll make sure it shows up on the screen right now. And we're going to caveat this by saying we are recording this on the 3rd of July. Yes, the 3rd of July. We're doing this slightly early. So if there happens to be any transfers or any changes in the conversation that we're talking about today, do not hound us. Unfortunately, it just appears to be the time that we are recording this. But most importantly, make sure you also subscribe and get those notifications to this channel. We'd love to have you as a subscriber, and we're going to have a lot more content in the weeks to come. But more importantly, let's check in with Andy. So Andy, we've had a bit of a break from our last season of our pods. Are you looking forward to this season?
Yes, it's been nice to have a bit of a break and just chill out for a few weeks. So, but yeah, I'm really buzzing to, obviously to be back on with yourself and the joy you got with Rory and Tommy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see what content we produce this season, because I think we're going to have a lot to talk about between the four of us.
But more importantly, we're going to talk about your beloved Man United, and I'm glad that you got some energy levels for it because there's a lot to talk about. But let's briefly start about talking about last season. In your own kind of mind, how did last season pan out?
It was an absolute disaster. I think there's no other way in which you could put it. I mean, at the start of last season, when we won 4-0, 4-5-0 against Leeds, and Rafael Varane had been onto the pitch, and then we finished the window. I mean, when we looked back on the transfer window, we'd signed Rafael Varane, Ronaldo had come back, we'd signed Jadon Sancho. We'd done some, on the face of it, some decent business. And I think, unfortunately, it just all unravelled very, very quickly. I think there was a decision made roughly about October time to give Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a new contract. And I think that raised a lot of eyebrows because although he'd done well in getting, 2 seasons of consecutive Champions League football, he did fail miserably in the Europa League final. And there was quite a few concerns about, his tactical nous and in-game management and things. So there were sort of concerns there. I think outside of his control, I think the Ronaldo thing, it's not 100%. I don't think it was 100% Solskjaer's idea to bring Ronaldo in. I think that was very much a club decision, shall we say. Whether they're all for footballing reasons, I probably hazard a guess, not completely. Obviously, Ronaldo still has a lot to give as a footballer, and that showed during the season that at stages that he still has a lot to offer. But yeah, I think that seemed to interrupt the flow, and I think it just went from bad to worse. Really, I think some of the performances throughout the season were absolutely embarrassing. I think that 4-1 loss to Watford, I think, which did for Solskjaer's job. And that was pretty much the only win that Watford got from then to the end of the season as well. I think it was just one of those things where it was like a perfect storm, which contributed. You had, Rafael Varane got injured, Jadon Sancho didn't hit the ground running. I think there was, I think a lot of the time in the team, you're going to have a couple of players that perhaps aren't performing to their maximum. And I think for Manchester United, it was a collective collapse. I think when you have 7 or 8, regular first team players all have significant drops in performances, if you think about the likes of Marcus Rashford, you think about Harry Maguire, Bruno Fernandes has had quite a big drop by his standards. Paul Pogba started well, got injured, and then decided he couldn't be asked. I mean, that's a normal season. You've had a lot of off-pitch stuff as well. I think with obviously the Greenwood legal situation, That's still ongoing at the moment, which wasn't particularly pleasant at all. And then you had obviously a lot of leaks coming out of the club, a lot of dressing room unrest. The likes of Jesse Lingard didn't do himself any favours. I think there was just a lot going wrong really. Pretty much every single week you're reading about infighting, and apparently Ronaldo and Maguire didn't have a great relationship. A lot of people questioning why Maguire is captain, and that's not from fans. That's literally from their own, his own teammates. And it was obviously not a happy camp. Obviously, Rangnick came in, and the idea behind it is he would stay for 6 months and then take a consultancy role. But certainly, in terms of the management side of it, it was an absolute disaster. The players didn't buy into his philosophy. Whether that's down to, I think he's got to take responsibility for that, as well as the players, to be fair. Because obviously for the players, for some of them, this is like the third manager that they're thrown under the bus.
Yeah, exactly.
They threw Mourinho under the bus, they threw Solskjaer under the bus, and they didn't even give Rangnick a chance, to be honest. I think Rangnick, he said things that the fans wanted to hear, but is of what seems obvious that he didn't foster a particularly good relationship with those inside the club, whether that be the players or elsewhere. I think what was disappointing was the level of performances. Even in games where we drew or got a win out of it, there's only really a handful of decent performances throughout the whole season, and I think we're extremely fortunate to finish the season in 6th place. I don't think if we'd have finished 8th or 9th, I don't think anybody could have complained really. So, I think what it showed is that a lot needs to change. Obviously, there's still a lot of bad feeling against the Glazers and their continued ownership of the club. And I think it felt like last season was a culmination of just years and years of bad decision making coming to fruition. I think most of the time I've just gone through being angry about everything, but I think at the moment it's just like, well, it's happened now, and I think the good thing about it's forced Manchester United to make some changes. Certainly in terms of the off the pitch side of things as well. There's been quite a few changes in management there. They've brought in a manager in Ten Hag who probably the first manager we brought in really, who's at his peak. Growing reputation at his peak. Seems to play a modern style of football. So last season I think was really bad, but I think on the bright side, I think this season, the bar is set quite low. I don't think there's a particularly high expectation on there. So it was a bad season. I think there's only really a couple of players that can really hold their hands up and go, I gave everything.
Certainly. But let's move on then to your kind of transfer wish list, because as it currently stands, Man United haven't signed any players. They've moved on a few players. Granted, they've kind of come to the end of their contract. So the likes of Pogba we're talking about, Jesse Lingard. And also now we've had Cristiano Ronaldo instigate that he wants to leave the club, be it that he's obviously trying to work with his current agent, George Mendes, to kind of get a move. Where that will be, we don't know. Obviously, at this stage, it seems to be that he's trying to get a Champions League-based team, ideally, whether that be in the Premier League or elsewhere. I suspect it's going to be more likely to be abroad. But let's more focus on the transfer wish list for Man United. So there's been a lot of talk about Frankie de Jong, and obviously that's an ongoing saga with Barcelona at this stage as we currently stand. What seems to be more kind of fruitful at the moment seems to be around defenders. So Lisandro Martinez from Ajax seems to be one that potentially might be coming through. We've also had earlier in this kind of, I suppose, summer periods talks with Stefan de Vrij from Inter Milan. In particular, Inter Milan are looking to raise funds. So potentially that looks like something to be on the cards. But we've also got the likes of Tomori at AC Milan that potentially might be attempted to come to Man United. I don't know why, given that AC Milan have just won the Serie A title. From your point of view, Andy, where do you think Man United need to strengthen?
I mean, you can make the case that we ideally probably need 9 or 10 players over the next couple of windows. Now, it's not going to happen in one window. It's not realistic. But I think what I do hope is that as long as Erik Ten Hag gets the targets that he wants, then that's the important thing. I think I saw something the other day where a United-based Twitter account calculated how many players Manchester United have been linked with, and it's genuinely, no word of a lie, it's over 100 players at the moment. So it's difficult to determine there. But I think for what seems to be relatively concrete, is that obviously there's been a fee agreed with the left back to Malaysia. He's just broken through to the Dutch team. Exciting. I can't say I've watched him too much, to be honest with you. By all accounts, he's an exciting attacking left back. Obviously he's played for Feyenoord. He's Dutch international. And for anybody that watched Alex Telles last season, I'd like to think it'd be an improvement. I think there was apparently Leon had already agreed to fee with him for like 13, 14 million or something like that. Manchester United came in, offered a couple of £1 million more. Whereas I think if Manchester United had gone in there and gone, I want this player, we'd have been quoted 30 million. Because, this whole United tax, I think, is 100% a thing. When United come for a player, the price goes up. So I think it's good business there. That seems to be the one that will be the first signing. I think Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano have given it the here we go, or exclusive or whatever. I think with Frankie de Jong, obviously that's been the big deal. It's been, I think Barcelona are at the saving face stage of the process, shall we say? Because we did save Messi last year. They gave it the whole, we want to keep him. But the reality is, if they do want to keep him, he's going to have to take a massive wage reduction, which I don't think he's going to do. Plus, they want to sign, Lewandowski. I think they want to sign Bernardo Silva, Rafinha from Leeds. Like, they've got a lot of things they want to do without the money to do it at the moment. So I think that will conclude itself eventually. I think it's just one of those. Because of what Barcelona are like as a football club at the moment, it's not an easy deal to do. No. And because of all the politics involved in it, both clubs are going to try and present the deal when it gets done as having got the better end of it. So hopefully that will conclude. I think Manchester United have gone too far into the process to really back out at this point, but you never know. I think the other one with the Sandro Martinez, obviously Ajax player, obviously Ten Hag will know very well. I think he fits into a defensive midfield role, which I think could be useful. So certainly, if that's who Ten Hag wants, I think the going rate is roughly 35 to 40 million, give or take, which I think's not bad. I think this, and it's quite widely acknowledged, has been an offer put in for Christian Eriksen. I think that is an absolute no-brainer if that could be over the line. Excellent rotation option. It's a real quality option, whether it be starting or coming off the bench or giving Bruno a bit of a rest in games. I think it'll be a real quality addition. I think what Manchester United have lacked is somebody to come off the bench and make a difference. And I think that's the sort of caliber of player who would do that. Because let's be honest, he's going to go to the World Cup regardless of how many games he plays. For Denmark, I don't think he's going to be dropped at this stage. So I think that's a no-brainer, but I think there is also the pull of staying in London, staying with Brentford, who gave him, gave him a chance in English football. And I think that shouldn't be understated, given the situation he found himself in because of what happened in the Euros last summer. I think if we get those targets over the line, that's probably a good 6 or 7 out of 10. I think we need a specialist defensive midfielder. And if Ronaldo leaves, we're definitely going to need somebody up front. But I think that does mean there's going to have to be some money raised from some of the squad members. I think there's vague chats linking Andreas Pereira and Eric Bailly to Fulham. You've got people like sort of Phil Jones will surely be looking for a new club at this point. So there's still a few players which I think need to be moved on. I think Tellers' days is numbered. I think Wan-Bissaka, I think his days are numbered at the club now. I mean, considering he cost 50 million quid and apparently was the best option of a few hundred right backs, for somebody who isn't particularly good going forward. But then again, Dallow's hardly much better, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
He looks a bit more aesthetically pleasing, I suppose, on the ball, but his end product is just as bad. So, there's a lot of positions that need a lot of work. I think it seems that Ten Hag is focusing more on the midfield and the defence. And then, realistically, the rest of it's just have to be worked on in the next few windows, really.
Definitely. So, Andy, I'm going to move you to the main question, and that is, where do you think Man United will end up? So, obviously, in my head, I feel like this is a project. Obviously, we shouldn't expect too much from Man United this season, but as a fan, you're probably going to want to see progress from last season. So, where do you think realistically Man United could end up?
I still think, again, I suppose one of those conversations almost worth reflecting on after the transfer window, but I still think top four and a crack at a domestic trophy should be the minimum expectation. That's kind of what I would want out of a season as a minimum. But realistically, I think, we know it's going to be tough competition for those top four places. And I think that, as long as there's an improvement as an absolute baseline in the style of football, and I think what I want to be able to do is watch Manchester United and know what they're trying to do, they're trying to what style of football they're trying to play, and see that be built upon over the course of the season. I think that as an absolute basic, I think needs to be the main objective. We've got a systems coach in Ten Hag. So hopefully there. And I think the other part of it as well, I think there's quite a few players who are described as being in the last chance saloon, I think, at Manchester United. So I think even if there's not too many players coming into the club, I think at the very, very least there'll be an improvement based on what they produced last season. So certainly. I think even if there's just an improvement with the players that are already there, I think the results will pick up as a result.
And do you think Steve McLaren will have an influence as well, being that he's at the ex-Man United connection and obviously had a good relationship with Ten Hag when he was back in Holland as well? Do you think he'll have an impact on this team this season?
Yeah, by all accounts. I mean, I know he gets a lot of stick as manager because obviously he had that disastrous England spell. He didn't have very good spells at Derby or Newcastle. So I know he's obviously got quite a bad rep in England, but I think, he did win a league title in Holland with FC20. He's put himself out there, travelled about. And I think from those in the game, he is apparently quite a good coach. And like I said, that's what you have to remember. He's not coming there to be the manager. He's coming there to be a senior coach in the team. And I think it's a good addition to Ten Hag's team because he knows a little bit about the Dutch football style. He knows obviously about English football, and I think there's a lot of knowledge that he can bring forward. So, I think it's a good move.
Well, many thanks to you, Andy, for that. That's really useful. For you who are watching right now, what do you think? Do you agree with Andy? Let us know in the comments below. But make sure you subscribe and get the notifications for our next episode. So until then, take care and we'll see you at the next episode.